Conflict. I'm sure all of us have been in situations at work or in our personal lives where we've been in conflict and had differences of opinion, and perhaps this has caused us a bit of stress. In this video, I'm going to use the d.i.s.c profiling system to have a look at typical responses to stress and some tools and techniques to help all of us improve how we deal in a stressful conflict situation. If you'd like more videos on how to realize your potential and live your best life, please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to be notified when I post a new video every Tuesday. As an organizational psychologist and corporate trainer, I've used the d.i.s.c system over many years, and one of the really powerful things is that it's really good at helping us to deal with conflict and to understand where others are coming from if they see things differently to us. An important thing to realize is that we see our behavior from the inside out. So someone might think of themselves as having a take charge attitude, but someone from another quadrant might look at that same behavior and think, actually, I find you quite bossy and demanding. So just to reframe this, we might think that differences cause conflict, but really differences are just differences. It's how we respond to them that matters. We might think different is wrong, but that's not the case. It's just different. And instead of looking for I win, you lose, let's go for the win-win situation. Let's dive in and talk about conflict and stress using d.i.s.c profiles. The first thing I'd like you to reflect on is, how do you behave in a conflict situation? In my previous video, we talked about the different d.i.s.c styles and typical behaviors. But I'd like to remind you that we're all actually a combination of different styles and not necessarily one pure style. So you might identify with a couple of these different typical behaviors in a stress situation. And I'd like you to think about if you can take a combination of tools and techniques to help you to deal with stress and conflict better. So the objectives of this video are for you to first of all discover your style's typical reactions in a stress or conflict situation, and secondly, to learn how to maximize your effectiveness in dealing with conflict. Here's a reminder of the 4 primary d.i.s.c styles. What we look at is whether you're more outgoing or reserved, so would you be at the top or the bottom of the screen? And secondly, we look at, are you more task or people-oriented? Would you be on the left or the right-hand side? If your answers were outgoing and task-oriented, you would be the D, and an eagle is a good representation of that style. People who are people-oriented and outgoing would be the peacock or the I. I stands for influence. If you're more reserved and people-oriented, you would be the S quadrant, S for steadiness, and we use the dove to symbolize that quadrant. And if you're reserved and task-oriented, you would be in the C for conscientious quadrant, and that's the owl in that quadrant. Right, if we use the 4 styles and look at the typical behaviors that they have under conflict situations. First of all, those at the top, the Ds and the Is, the default is to want to assert themselves. So people with either the D or the I style are likely to want to speak their minds when put under pressure. The S's and the C's tend to suppress. They're both likely to keep their thoughts to themselves in a conflict situation. If we look at the relationships in another way, we can see that the D and the C are both on the task-oriented side, and they both tend to focus on the logic of the situation. So they use facts and analysis to make their arguments. On the right-hand side, the I's and the S's tend to focus more on feelings, and so they're more likely to rely on emotions in a conflict situation. Looking at the big picture, we can see how the styles combine these approaches to form their own unique responses to conflict. For the D person, that response is to demand. Their goal is victory. They want to win an argument. They may tend to become aggressive and autocratic, create win-lose outcomes. They can be very obstinate and refuse to bend, and they try to overpower with force. Faced with the same conflict, however, the high I person would be driven to express, and their goal is acknowledgement. So the I person wants to be heard. They may initially gloss over tension. They would also verbalize feelings impulsively, and attacks could get a bit personal. The response of the S person is to comply, with their goal being harmony. They just want everyone to get along. So the high S's tend to avoid aggression. They try and not deal with conflict at all. They try to save the relationship. And so they would tend to accommodate or give in to favor the relationship over the facts. But they could simmer beneath the surface. For the high Cs, conflict usually means that they withdraw. Their goal is justice, but they can become defensive. They can strategize in a controlled fashion, focusing on the facts, but they can also resist passive-aggressively, so they might withhold vital information just as a form of resistance, even though other people may not realize that that's what's happening. Where the Ds tend to overpower with force, the Cs try and overpower with logic and facts. So let's have a look at some tools and techniques for each of the styles to use and see which one of these or combination of these might apply best to you. So for high Ds, resist the temptation to turn it into a competition. Understand that other people might be intimidated by a direct and forceful approach. The high Is, try and remember it may not be personal. Try not to gloss over conflict, which may just prolong it and actually make it worse in the long run. For high S's, understand that conflict in itself is not necessarily a bad thing and can actually be quite useful in order to make progress and to think deeply and be creative. The S's should also speak up rather than always being cooperative, as they may have a vital piece of information that could really create a good outcome for the task at hand. For the high Cs, give others a chance to express their feelings, even if it may seem irrelevant to you as a fact-based person. And also remember that there could be more than one valid way to see the same facts. I hope this video has given you some food for thought and also some tips that you might want to try out in a conflict situation. Comment below and let me know which tactic you might want to use in a next conflict situation. If you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell to be notified when I post a new video every Tuesday. See you next time. Bye.